A word, if I may, about something else. Front page lead of the Times today. You've written a piece for the Times, which says the Times says you are getting tough over the fate of Migrant, as they put it. And you want an opt-out from Britain taking a share of the quota of people who are who've left trying to find a new life in Europe. Isn't this a bit of a false argument? We have an opt-out already. It was negotiated many years ago.
Well, we have consistently said that we would not participate in these, that we felt that it was right that this should be, any such scheme of quotas should be a voluntary scheme. There are always discussions in Europe as on what basis issues are taken forward. We have an opt-out on justice and home affairs measures, and I think this migration issues are clearly justice and home affairs measures.
So there's nothing really new then in your opt-out, this sort of, if it is an opt-out?
What is right is that as a government, both I and the Prime Minister have been saying consistently and clearly for some time that we would not participate in this scheme. And there's a reason for that. We do feel that, and people often talk about this as being an issue primarily about refugees. Actually, if you look at people coming across the central Mediterranean, large number of people in the countries they're coming from, in countries like Nigeria, Eritrea, Somalia. These are very often economic migrants, people who have paid criminal gangs to transport them across Africa, to put them into vessels which those criminal gangs know are not seaworthy, where they know there is a risk of people dying, but they are, they're reckoning that actually they will be rescued.
Desperation drove them. Poverty, unemployment, war, disease. The terror and grinding hopelessness that pervades much of Africa and the Middle East. Barefoot survivors from the sinking boats, drawn together by the despair that propelled them across the Mediterranean.
Some are from Burundi, some are from Somalia, some are from Syria, some are from Pakistan, some are from Dakar, Burkina Faso, Nigeria, Mali.
The UN Refugee Agency says that migrants who cross the Mediterranean come from more than 40 countries. Last year, the greatest number, 31%, were from Syria, 18% from Eritrea, 25% from other countries in sub-Saharan Africa, 5% fled Afghanistan, and 3% were Palestinian. According to the International Organization for Migration, the largest numbers so far this year are from Gambia, Senegal and Somalia. A bomb in the Somali capital last month. The jihadis of Al-Shabaab target officials, but anyone can get killed. Poverty and violence, what kind of a life is that? No wonder so many leave. To the north, Eritrea is a militarized gulag. Every able-bodied person is conscripted indefinitely, including women. They're paid as little as £10 a month. It's an army of virtual slaves. President Isaias Afwerki, seen here at a military funeral, brooks no dissent. And hundreds of thousands risk his shoot-to-kill policy for those caught crossing the border.
All Eritreans these days, between the age of 18 and 54, are in national service. They are not remunerated. They work for free for the government and the party, the ruling party of the country. Also, students at the age of between 16 and 18 are transferred to Sawa, the military camp. So practically the whole country is in arms.
And then there's Syria. War has forced 10 million Syrians to flee. Many live in desperate conditions. Only 150,000 have been legally resettled in Europe. Britain has accepted just 143. War, famine, pestilence, and death. In the Bible, they called them the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse. Those who drown in the Mediterranean have fled them all, and most who live in the comfort of Europe would rather not know.
And the problem is the message it's sending, this sort of language you've been using, it sends to the rest of Europe. I don't know if you heard Sandro Gozzi, the Italian Minister for European Affairs, on this programme an hour ago, and he said what it sounds as if we are trying to do is opt out of helping people who are fleeing from starvation.
No, absolutely not. And I would reject that in two ways. First of all, as I've just mentioned, we're participating in the search and rescue in the Mediterranean. HMS Bulwark is part of that. We have seeking helicopters there.
But you want to send them back home?
2 border force cutters. Secondly, in relation to refugees from Syria, people who are have been disrupted, whose lives have been upturned as a result of what has been happening in Syria, we are the second biggest bilateral donor in relation to aid. To £800 million has been given. We are supporting people who have had to, who are refugees from Syria.
But when you look at people who are leading truly, truly, truly desperate lives, Syrian people, how many Syrians have actually been allowed to settle in this country?
Well, we have taken overall through the various schemes, several thousand people have been allowed to settle in this country because we are accepting asylum claims.
I'm talking specifically about Syrians.
But this is Syrians, asylum claims from Syrians, but also schemes including our very specific scheme to take a number of people who are some of the most vulnerable, particularly those who have suffered from sexual violence.
But you'd accept that it's a very, very small percentage of those people who want to come here.
Well, it's a small percentage of those people who are refugees from Syria, who've been disrupted from Syria and who are in neighbouring countries. But Europe
or in desperately squalid refugee camps and the
Europe
like.
is not going to be able to accommodate the several million people who have been disrupted from Syria, and many of whom actually want to be able to stay in the region and to be able at some stage to go home. The best way to help those is what we as a government are doing, £800 million, helping in those refugee camps, providing medical supplies, providing food, providing water, providing shelter, keeping those people alive.